Hi there, welcome back to ViewPoint Christian Academy, where we have been empowering parents to provide a Christian education for their families since 1984. We've been doing it through our biblical, individualized, mastery-based approach. I'm Dr. Adam Rondeau. It's time for another Monday Moment. In this issue of Monday Moments, in this episode, we're going to discuss what I believe to be the two biggest challenges in education right now. Stay tuned. All right, so what are the two biggest issues that I think are facing education right now? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with science or math, although it touches on those. But really, I believe that the two biggest issues that education is facing in America right now are cultural issues. The two big cultural issues of the push for comprehensive sexuality education and the push of critical race theory to mainstream those into regular public and private education in the United States. So let's take these two big issues, break them apart just a little bit, and talk about them. The first one is comprehensive sexuality education. Now, we're going to keep this episode, just like all the other episodes, we try to keep family friendly. So I'm not going to go into any of the graphic portrayals of much of the curriculum, etc., that is included in comprehensive sexuality education. I would encourage you to take advantage of the Massachusetts Informed Parents Facebook page. Go there, like it, follow it. Lots of great details and information about comprehensive sexuality education in particular, and how it is trying to be mainstreamed and integrated into public education, particularly in the state of Massachusetts. But don't be naive to think it's just the state of Massachusetts. It's already been integrated into California and other places. It's already being integrated. The goal is to integrate it into all education here in the United States of America as much as possible. Not just in the government education, but there are also whispers of it in private education as well. Not necessarily Christian schools, but many private schools are also starting to take advantage of some of these things. Now, what's the problem with comprehensive sexuality education? Well, there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. One is that one of the biggest problems, I know that I probably have, and that you would probably as well, is that the primary curriculum that is being promoted to integrate comprehensive sexuality education K through 12, starting as early as kindergarten, and there are some really graphic and obscene things happening even in first grade classrooms in regards to this. We won't get into it, but again, go to Massachusetts Informed Parents and get some great information on their Facebook page. You could also, Massachusetts Family Institute is a great resource as well. You can text education to 797979 or educación 797979 for Spanish version of that as well. And they'll text you some great information that you can use as a resource in helping you to understand and make good decisions for your family in this regards. But the primary curriculum that is being pushed for this is one called Get Real, and it is produced by none other than Planned Parenthood. That's right. Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion service provider in the United States, is also trying to get their foot in the door for kindergarten through grade 12 students and teach them their version of what sexuality should look like. Look, we are in June in the midst of what is called, quote unquote, Pride Month. And ungodly versions of marriage, ungodly versions of God's plan and design for husbands and wives are being promoted everywhere. Even Blue's Clues this month. Blue's Clues. Yes, the Little Kid Show is doing a special episode that features transgender drag queens, etc. So this stuff is being thrown down the throats of our culture. All right. Pride Month is a given in any government school here in the United States. If your child goes to a government school, a public school, they're going to be inundated with Pride Month stuff. The truth of the matter is that it is having a drastic and a major effect on our culture and our our youth and in the generations. Recently, back in February, a Gallup poll was released that indicated, and the statistics showed, they did a multi-generational study on sexuality. And they found that Generation Z, 1 in 6 of them, or about 16% of all Generation Z adults, identify as homosexual, or in some form, or LGBTQ plus whatever, identify in that way. That as opposed to my generation, Generation X, which was only 3.8%, a little less than 4%. And then if you go down to the boomers, it's 1 point something percent. So what are we seeing? We are seeing in this generation, the Gen Z adults that are beginning to, they're young adults that still at this point, they're beginning to enter into society. We're seeing that about 1 in 6, a huge percentage of them are adapting to, accepting, or embracing these lifestyles, these behaviors, and these choices. Why? Why is there such a big generational gap in this regards? Well, number one is because it is being thrown down. I mean, for these Gen Z kids, these Gen Z adults were kids back in 2005 when Massachusetts made gay marriage the law of the land. And they were also around in 2015 when the Supreme Court made it the law of this country. And so therefore they have been in a position where they have been bombarded with influence and cultures that say this is right, this is right, this is right. And so it's a big thing. There's a concerted effort on the part of the culture. Now, there's a danger in this. Why? When a young person who is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is allowed to be influenced to think that you were born a boy, but really if you want to be a girl, that's fine, you can have the option. Or you were born a girl, but if you want to be a boy, that's fine. We can do things to help you with it. There is a concerted effort to arouse curiosity in this area. And these things are not right. We read the scriptures, we know that these things are evil. And so curiosity about evil is never a good thing. We can go back to the Garden of Eden. We can see that Eve was hanging out at the tree of knowledge of good and evil. She was hanging out around the wrong tree when the serpent came and said, hey, check it out. She was curious about the wrong things. We need to avoid curiosity about the wrong things. What is the right thing? We need to know that. We don't need to know all the facts and all the knowledge about the things that the scripture says are wrong. We need to know the facts and the knowledge about what the scripture says are right. We should be, as Paul says in Romans, we should be wise concerning good and simple concerning evil. Now, some might listen to that and say, what, are you promoting ignorance? No, I'm promoting godliness. I'm trying to promote knowledge about the right. Look, when an FBI agent is trained or a Treasury agent is trained on how to identify a counterfeit bill, they don't take a bunch of counterfeit bills and say, this is what a counterfeit bill looks like. They give them the real thing. And they become so familiar with the real thing, they can identify the fake thing or the wrong thing a mile away. That's how we need to train our children. Not to inundate them or to submit them to unnatural curiosity, ungodly curiosity, but rather, and I know I'm not being politically correct here, but whatever, but rather we need, listen, we must, it is so vital and it is so important, we must make them so familiar with the right, with God's way, that they will say, no, I reject that which is not of God. So this is a big deal, and it is being thrown down their throats in school. And you say, what, you're being forced? Yeah, recently in Groton, just this past week, Groton, Massachusetts, 6th grade students, 11 and 12-year-olds were given a survey. And the parents caught wind of this survey. The parents weren't asked about it. They weren't informed about it. The kids were just given the survey. And when the parents found out about the questions about it that had a sexual nature, they were offended and upset, rightly so. And they said, what is wrong with this? Why is this being allowed? Because there is an agenda. There is an agenda in education today to push comprehensive sexuality education, which promotes transgenderism, promotes homosexuality, promotes promiscuity, all of this that is completely and totally against what the scriptures say. Trying to sexualize children at a young age will lead to an increase in LGBTQ, etc. Because, again, the younger they start, with this sexualization. The more it grows. It's like spilling a glass of water on a table. The water doesn't stay in one place. It's continually trying to spread. This is what evil does. It continually tries to spread and grow and go and go and go. So this is a big problem. Schools are being used as tools to sexualize children at young age, and this is a problem. Problem number 2, critical race theory. And many people have heard about this. Many people don't even have an idea as to what it actually is. Critical race theory is an approach, and it is the most significant approach that is really being pushed on all levels of politics, etc., in our country right now. Critical race theory is basically a way of looking at society and history through the lens of racism. It's really kind of a promotion of racism. It really does try to, in many ways, and I would encourage you to check it out and study more. This is not this is not intended to be an instructional video on this idea, but it is intended to help you be aware that this is a big problem in our culture. Basically, if you were to boil down critical race theory and all of its tenets, it would be promoted in such a way that all white people are oppressors of minorities, whether they know it or not. It's just baked into them. All minorities are victims, whether they know it or not. And that there are systemic things in place to make white people superior to black or brown or whatever minorities, right? Asians. And basically what it does is it looks at people exactly the opposite way that Martin Luther King Jr. said we should look at people. He said he dreamed of a society one day where his children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And this does the exact opposite. It looks at everyone through the filter of racism. The color of their skin really matters. This began to gain popularity a couple of years ago, back in 2019, when the New York Times promoted what was called the 1619 Project on the 400th anniversary of 1619, when, you know, in Jamestown, the first slaves were brought to the United States, and it really kind of analyzed 400 years of history through the lens of race, and so it really began to catch on. The problem is with this, again, it's a wrong mindset. Now, am I denying that there have been some terrible human rights violations by the United States over the past years in our history? No. Racism, Andrew Jackson's Trail of Tears, where he forcibly removed many of the Native American tribes and moved them out west, and so many of them died at service. No, that was a human rights violation. Yes, there have been some things that the nation has done. I'm not blind to that, and I'm not trying to cover that or hide that or ignore that. However, when we begin to look at that and we begin to paint, again, it's a racist approach to cultural issues and particularly history. All right, but when we begin to promote this and pit ethnic groups, again, I got problems with the word racism, by the way. I believe that there is one race, the human race, and we all have different levels of melanin in our skin, which, you know, makes us different shades of brown. Light brown, dark brown, somewhere in between, it doesn't really matter. I believe we're all one human race. It's an evolutionary concept which I reject. But anyways, it's bleeding into many other areas. And it's basically trying to create a level of low expectations in academics in many ways. For instance, an article from the Washington Times recently speaking about critical race theory and the idea and the question of, is math racist? Right? California schools are beginning to implement something along these lines. And let me just quote from this this article. It says, proponents of new math say the way the subject currently is taught is suffused with white supremacy. So essentially what it's saying is that math is a white supremacist subject. They say it handicaps some minority in students by insisting on what they consider racist concept, such as, and I'm quoting, arriving at correct answers. 2 + 2 = 4 is a racist concept when you take critical race theory to its extreme, which is happening. I'm not saying that it's, you know, this is the extreme. No, this is the stuff that's going on across in New York and California. because they're saying making students get the right answer in math is racist. Can you see the detrimental effects that this philosophy is having on our education system here in the United States? It's huge. Another thing connected with this is things like action civics, which sounds great. Encourage students as they study about civics in America to become involved and get involved in a campaign, this, that, or the other thing. Here's the problem with that. Most of the teachers and the curriculums in a government-funded school are going to encourage children to become activists in areas that do not align with the values of Scripture, that do not align with a Christian family's values. So that's a big problem. It supports and promotes things like Black Lives Matter, BLM curriculum, and these things are being infused as well. And we have big problems in many ways with with a lot of things that are going on in there. Sadly, I'm even hearing whispers of critical race theory in circles of Christian education. The American Association of Christian Schools International has done some things that give me pause and concern, ACSI, in regards to promotion of critical race theory. So again, this is a big problem. Two big problems facing our education system: comprehensive sexuality education and critical race theory. And both of these have massive implications for our children, not only in their spiritual development, but also even in regards to their academic development. Teachers are being told in different places, even in the state of Massachusetts, that if you fail a child, you're a racist. What? How is that racist? How is it racist to expect that they can learn? How is that a problem? You know what's racist? Is to look at someone and say, oh, because your skin is this tone of color, you can't be expected to learn. What? That is to me, that is like one of the most ridiculous and racist, if you would, things, bigoted, prejudiced, discriminatory things that you could say to someone. Oh, you have that skin color? Oh, you're that skin tone? Oh, therefore, you cannot learn. What? How devaluing that is to someone. But no, instead, we need schools like ViewPoint Christian Academy that says, you know what, it doesn't matter what tone of skin you have. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter anything. We expect that you can learn and use the God-given abilities that you have and continue to grow. So, again, these are the two biggest problems in education. Aren't you glad that there are Christian education options like ViewPoint? We know we're not the only one. We know that there are many. But aren't you glad that you have tools and resources at your disposal to take control of your child's education? Let me encourage you, mom and dads, hang on to the reins of your child's education. Don't give them up, and especially don't give them over to the public education system. And years ago, people would think, well, we'll start them out in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then we'll move them over as they get older, junior high and high school. There are no safe grades. There are no safe grades anymore when it comes to developing a biblical worldview. Well, I hope that maybe this has been a little bit informative for you. Check out our biblical worldview statement on viewpointchristian.org and see how our curriculum aligns with the values of Scripture and how we reject things like critical race theory. We reject things like evolution. We take a biblical approach to understand. We allow the parents to retain the responsibility of giving their children the talk. It's not the school's responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility. Mom and dad, it's your responsibility. Now, don't shirk it. Don't put it off. But it is your responsibility to teach your children and to talk to your children about these topics. We will always approach things from a biblical worldview. And we want to help you do the same for your family to raise up a godly generation in this land. God bless you. Have a great week.